I'm Mauro Oliveira, Head of Latin America Equities at Credit Suisse. Welcome to our second Brazil Trends for Cash Equities interview. Today, I have the honor of receiving Gustavo Salomão, CIO of Norte Asset Management. Gustavo has 27 years of experience in financial market, where he started his career in 1994 at Citibank. In 1995, he went to Banco Garantia, bought by Credit Suisse in 1998, where he remained for 21 years at the proprietary trading desk. Salomão became head of equities desk since 2007, and also was put in charge of the treasury at Credit Suisse in 2010. He was an officer and member of the executive board at Credit Suisse Brazil for nearly 10 years. After leaving the bank, he began to invest in venture capital and became a partner of KMS Capital in 2018, where he remained there until July 2020, when he decided to start Norte Asset Management and be the CIO. Gustavo holds an undergraduate degree in computer engineer from ITA, and he is a CFA chartholder. Welcome to our conversation, Gustavo, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Mauro. Thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thank you, Gustavo. So, in terms of questions, we're here looking deeply in Brazil's macro situation. What are your concerns in regards to inflation, fiscal accounts, and politics? Is there upside or downside to the reforms, and what do they aim to achieve?
Well, there's a lot of factors at play at the same time, right? So, we have the concern regarding to inflation. Obviously, we believe it's a temporary inflation because there's a lot of factors like commodities going up due to what happened in supply and demand during the pandemic. So now it's a kind of, a lot of supply was contained and a lot of capacity was contained due to the pandemic that happened last year. And with all the stimulus that's happening, both in our economy and the global economy, from all economies, name it China, US, and also Brazil. So we're starting to see a lot of consumption, so a lot of demand, and there's not enough supply to meet that consumption at the same time. So that's a temporary effect that we've seen and thus in the path to recovery of the economic activity. So there is a concern, and we were in Brazil in a record low interest rates. So now the central bank is taking measures to adjust these inflation rates to the new scenario of higher inflation. We believe inflation and consensus for the market that inflation will be close to the top of the band that the central bank and the inflation target. So it'll be between 5 and 5.5. So we agree with that view, and there's always a risk to the upside on that. But I think that the central bank is already taking measures. So brought interest rates from 2% to 3.5. We believe it could go up to 5.5 or even to 6% by the end of this year. In terms of fiscal accounts, obviously, given what happened last year, we reached levels that were not that, let's say, normal, but we reached close to 90% of gross debt to GDP. Given what's going to happen this year with economy recovering, and we believe GDP will go up by around 4%. Will be around that level, around 90%, I believe. But it's always a risk, right? Because depending on the recovery, we're going to see more pressure to for the government to provide other measures and package to help the economy to recover and the people to consume. So there's some risk regarding that, but the government has shown to us that there's a lot of concern regarding this to respect the debt ceiling, respect. So I believe that they're working with Congress in measures that will not we're not going to surpass our fiscal, and not going to breach our fiscal discipline. But there's always a risk regarding that. And the other point that you asked is about politics. Well, I believe that, next year, everybody knows that's election. And given what happened recently, I believe the election will be again between the current president, that is Bolsonaro, and the PT, represented by Lula. So I believe that's the, let's say, most probable scenario. But from this year, we still have, still far from that, from the election, still 1.5 years, a lot of anxiety in the markets regarding that. But I believe with the new Congress that was just, the new presidents in both houses, the lower house and the Senate, they have demonstrated a commitment to the reforms. And I believe after some turbulence, we could see in the next quarters, in this quarter and the next quarters, there's some room for some kind of, some reform that could be approved. It's not going to be the ideal reform, but I believe we could have some advances in the fiscal reform and also in administrative reform, and also in the privatization of companies like Eletrobras, and continued advancement in auctions of concessions. It could be railroads or roads or airports. So I believe we have a window of opportunity in the next couple of months or next couple of quarters until, let's say, the fourth quarter of this year. So, and I hope, and it's our expectation that, some of these reforms will be approved.
Well, that's great. The next question, I know it's not an easy one, but I think you are the best person to answer. In terms of BRL currency, Brazilian interest rates, or equities, which of those are wrongly priced in Brazil, or are they fairly valued?
Well, first, for sure, I'm not the best person to answer this, but I could give, my opinion. Again, it's, as I said before, a lot of factors at play, and that depends a lot in the short term of the advance of this reforms in Congress. So, from one side, regarding effects, we've seen record inflows now, given what happening in commodities. What you're going to see is that the trade balance will be a record. So in our forecast here, we'll be above $70 billion because what happened in iron ore and also in the agricultural commodities, so soy. We're going to have a very positive trade balance that are going to help in the inflow. And I'd say that in some way, because the effects represents a lot of, the uncertainty and the risk related to politics, to the fiscal accounts, but also the inflows to investments and given a trade balance. I'd say that, and there's a lot of speculation that in the past, in this year, that maybe the finance minister would leave, there will be a change in the government, to the change and stance regarding all the economic measures. But I'd say that a lot of this was noise. And as a matter of fact, we are seeing some advance in some of this economic agenda of Minister Paulo Guedes. So I'd say there's room for improvement in the effects. So I could see that, the BRL, riding lower towards, an exchange rate of 5 to 1 to the US dollar. But I don't think there's a lot of distortion on that. So I'd say that it would be staying in a range. I don't see a lot of volatility on that. So I'd say that, BRL could stay like maybe between 5 or between 490 and maybe 550. That would be a range that I'd say that would be fair. Regarding the other question would be interest rates, right? So as I said before, inflation always has a tendency to surprise in the upside. So central bank will have to adjust rates towards 5.5, I'd say at least. So we could have like let's say a normal. You could say that normalized inflation would be around 4.5 to 5, maybe for next year. So you're gonna have like real interest rates between 1 and 2. So it would stay between 5.5 and 6.5. Going forward, that would depend a lot in the election. That would depend a lot in the rhetoric for next year and for the maybe if the government will continue or not. But I'd say there's some juice to be extracted in the middle of the curve. So when I look at interest rates curve, we've seen interest rates being considered at 9%, right, around 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So I'd say that I don't see interest rates, real interest rates, going again to 4%. 4 or 5%. So I'd say there's some, obviously it's a risk premium that's there, given all the uncertainty. And I'm not saying that this risk premium will be reduced extremely in the short term. But I'd say that with the advance of reforms and maybe privatization and other, let's say, more rational economic measures, we could see some of this risk premium to decrease. So we could see interest rates going down a little bit. Pricing 2025, 2024, and those levels, we could see, I'd see that there's some value to be extracted there by receiving those rates. Considering the stock exchange and the index, I believe there's a lot of value there. But actually, that depends a lot on the sector that you are analyzing and the company, because there's a lot of difference and there's a lot of, let's say, so many different companies and so many different strategies that I'd say that there's a lot of value in several of these companies. And so I'd say in terms of what's the best asset class to invest right now, I'd say equities, but with a lot of care. You have to understand really well, the micro perspective of each sector and each company and each management team. And but there's a lot of value to be created and generated by investing in equities in Brazil at this moment.
That's perfect. You mentioned like commodities, you mentioned inflows, you mentioned like trading surplus. On commodities, how do you see this commodity cycle right now? Where in the cycle you believe we are at?
I'd say we are in the middle to the end, like in the second half, if I would divide. Actually, we've seen, it's strange that, the last time that we saw a super cycle of commodity like this was 2007, in the beginning of 2008, and now we're seeing like iron ore at record levels, above those levels. And we're seeing soy at record levels as well. We're not seeing oil at record levels because at that moment, oil touched above $100 a barrel. And unfortunately, at this time, Brazil is not profiting as it could be, as it was profiting at that time when we turned into investment grade. We turned investment grade in May of 2008, and a lot of because of economic measures, fiscal measures, and the super cycle of commodities. So we're seeing another super cycle, and we're not profiting because a lot of measures that were done or taken during this period didn't put us in a position to profit from that, and we're still recovering from the pandemic, and it's like a long path to recovery. But considering what we're seeing, there's a lot of liquidity in the market, a lot of liquidity being provided, but by several of the major economies, as China and the U.S. And commodities is the natural hedge for inflation. So, and as I said before, there's some discrepancy between supply and demand on several of these commodities. So even, so seeing that in iron ore and steel, you're seeing that in agriculture. So you're seeing corn, copper, you're seeing soy, so iron ore, as I said, and so in steel, we have, commodity prices have increased a lot, and that has put, China to worry about it, and then making comments that you have to control this movement and trying to control, not allowing any speculative movements and that. But that's not so easy to be done, because actually at the end, what commands the prices are the supply and demand and the amount of liquidity available. So we're not worried about, let's say, fast decrease in commodity prices. We believe it's going to stay at this, let's say, high levels for a while. So until at least the end of the year. And that, in Brazil, there's a lot of opportunities to profit from that. A lot of companies that are very well positioned to profit from that. So we've seen a huge free cash flow yields in several of these commodity producers in Brazil.
That's great. You mentioned about inflation, and that inflation always surprises on the upside. And now we're talking about inflation all over the world, but of course in Brazil, there's a lot of conversation because we see central bank moving interest rates higher, and you have pointed this out. So as inflation now is a problem in Brazil again, who are the winners and losers in Brazil in this higher inflation environment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said before, first the commodity producers. So we're seeing like Petrobras, Vale, all the steel companies, Braskem, and even the sugar and alcohol. You have São Martinho, you have Cosan, you have also in agriculture you have SLC. So all of these commodity and also the protein producers like Marfrig, JBS. So. And who is in the other side? First, so you have commodities. Also, you have in some way some insurance companies that could provide from higher inflation, like Porto Seguro, and also from considering the pandemic, from the lower levels of a lower loss ratio, and in some way the banks could be beneficiaries of that. But actually, the banks are being also attacked by the new the fintechs and the new players. On the other side, who loses with inflation are the companies that have under cost commodities. So, for instance, Brazil Foods is a company that the main cost is corn, and they can't just actually, let's say, repass all the costs that they have, the increased cost to the price of chicken, for instance, that they're selling. So also in this way, like companies like Ambev that also have the costs in dollars and also in commodities, and M. Dias Branco also has the cost in commodities. So there's a lot of companies that they cannot repass all the increase in cost to their end price. So they're going to have those their margins, compromise a little bit.
So we are running to our last question, and this is one question for you in terms of what you think about your top picks in Brazil and your long-term sector preference, long and short, and is talking about like this rotation movement all over the world. Is there room for value versus growth rotation in Brazil?
Well, let me start with the last question in terms of rotation of value versus growth. I think, for a portfolio, you should have kind of a balanced view. So, you have some growth stocks and also some value stocks, and the ones that you consider that will have the better performance will be able to endure, because at the end of the point is that who's going to have the best performance in terms of earnings and cash flow, so EBITDA, considering all the factors that are at play. So my top picks are, first, we like commodities. So, but some commodities we like more than others. So we still like mining plays like Vale, and also steel names, steel producers like Usiminas and Gerdau. We think they're going to be able to still enjoy, as I said, given all the liquidity that is in the world and the demand, they're going to be able to increase prices, and that goes directly to their margin. And we're also the protein producers like Marfrig and JBS. We like them. We like SLC, that will benefit also from all the agriculture commodities. And a balance, we like some companies that are exposed to the domestic market as well, but that depends a lot in management. It depends a lot in each company. So, for instance, in the retail sector, there's a company that we like a lot that is Arezzo, because of the management, because of the strategy. There's a company that had an IPO this year that's called Intelbras, that distributes, all over the country, some electronic equipment like safety cameras, telephones, and also we started distributing solar panels. And there are different companies that we always focus in the management. For instance, there's another company that we like a lot. There is Infracommerce that just did an IPO. We like also, BTG. There's a bank that's evolving a lot. We like, there's a bunch of different companies that are exposed to the domestic market, into the evolution of the market, that we like a lot. We like now, we used to have Stone, we changed to PagSeguro. We like Local Web as also an internet play. So there's several companies that they have different ways of gaining market share. They are well positioned. So, for instance, that have great management, like Localiza, that is merging with Locamerica. We have the companies in the health sector like GNDI, Hapvida, that we like. We also like Redditor. The companies that we believe that are winners. Even if the country don't do so well, but they're going to be gaining market share. They have better management, better execution. They are bigger. They are better positioned to profit from either scenario.
So, thank you for to take the time to talk with us. That was perfect. That was super. I would like to thank you in the name of Credit Suisse, and hope we can share the same conversation another day. And thank you again.
It's it's an honor and a pleasure to be here talking to you, and I'm available for any other opportunity. And thanks a lot for the opportunity. Thank you.